In this video, watch in one hit all the batting masterclasses I filmed with professional coaches and players this calendar year, and make sure that you use the timecodes below to watch any specific section that you wish to. Let's go.
Right, let's just start with the grip and the stance. So grip, it's very simple. It's old school, very old school. So just put the bat down on the floor, pick it up, and that's roughly your grip. A lot of kids nowadays, I see, they turn their wrist around, the top grip around a bit. What happens with that is then you're kind of locked. You're very good on the on side, but then through the off side, you get a little bit locked with your top hand. So I'd say turn it around a bit. Again, the other thing to look at is your V, the top hand V, is in line with the outside edge, and your bottom hand V is kind of between the splice and the outside edge. So roughly that's the grip. Ideally, both the hands together, somewhere in the middle of the handle. I've seen a lot of batters with a split grip. The only problem with that is you tend to use your bottom hand a lot more. It's very difficult to control, especially when you're playing bigger shots. Someone like Bradman had a split grip. But then what helps with that split grip, it helps you to maneuver the bat a lot better. You have more control. But ideally speaking, both the hands together, somewhere in the middle of the handle, and that's the grip. As far as stance is concerned, generally you take your leg stump guard or a middle stump, depending on what your batting style is and what your game plan is. The big challenge is to find out the distance between your legs. So roughly speaking, shoulder width, but bottom line, the most important part is what makes you comfortable. If you're comfortable with that kind of a distance, it's fine. If it's more comfortable, wider, it's fine. So what the bottom line is this: the wider your stance is, more than your shoulder length, it'll give you a good solid base, but that will hinder your movement. You won't be able to move that well. If it's narrow, then obviously your mobility will increase, but then you don't have a strong base. So ideally speaking, somewhere in between, shoulder width apart, strong base, and that's your stance. So the other important thing is, it is a side-on game. Cricket is a side-on game. So you try and be as side-on as possible, but just make sure you're not overtly side-on, because end of the day, we've got two eyes. We need to look at the ball with both our eyes. So even though we are trying to be as side-on as possible, but making sure we are not overtly side-on and kind of a little open so we can see the ball with both our eyes and the ball running in with both our eyes. Obviously, there are a lot of people who have a little bit of an open stance. That's got to do with a couple of things: how much their front foot move, does it go across or not, or if it's going too much across, so you have an open stance. But having said that, for a right-hand batter against a left-arm seamer coming over the wicket, it also makes sense to open up a bit so that you are in line with the bowler, not with the stumps. So in line with the bowler, left-arm seamer over the wicket, just to open up a little bit. And in this stance, what a lot of batters do, is when they're asked to bend, they bend from their back. Right? And what happens when you bend from your back is your head falls over. It's very, very important that your head is straight, because one, your eye line's got to be at the same level, because once your head falls, obviously your left eye is higher than your right eye, so you need to get that in level. Secondly, if your head falls over, head being furthest from the ground and also the heaviest part of the body, wherever the head goes, the foot will follow. So if the head falls over, chances are you'll follow it with your front foot as well, and then you'll be playing everything across. So it's very, very important to keep your head straight within the base, and also when you're asked to bend, you bend with your knees, not with your back, because if you bend with your back, your head will fall. So when you're asked to bend with your knees. And that's predominantly it. Side on, but not overtly side on. Generally the grip, the bottom hand V, splice or between the splice and the outside edge, top hand V along the outside edge. Hands together, that's about it. That's with the grip, the stance, and how much you need to keep your feet apart and stuff like that. Trigger movement. Well, trigger movement, most of the batters you'll see nowadays, they have a trigger movement, but do I encourage a young kid, 11, 12-year-old starting to play the sport? I wouldn't encourage them to have a trigger movement, because the whole idea of the trigger movement is, especially when you're playing against quick bowlers, you get your body into motion, so your body is ready to move when the ball is delivered. So obviously there are different kinds of trigger movements. One is obviously the front foot press, which is very common and especially used to be very common in the subcontinent. You still see a lot of subcontinental batters. They go like front foot press. The other is back and across. Then there's something called the second stance, where you actually walk right across. One of the best players to do that was obviously Kevin Peterson. He would walk right across with both his feet. So there are different trigger movements, but it boils down to what suits you, what comes naturally to you to get your body moving to play the delivery. So, but the most important part is there are a couple of things. One, that trigger movement has to kind of finish before the ball is delivered. Because if you're still moving after the ball is delivered, you're still in the process of finishing a trigger movement, you'll be too late to react to the ball. So for example, if you have a front foot press and you're late, and that front foot press happens after the ball is delivered, when you're especially playing the quicker bowlers, you've got nowhere else to go. So more often than not, you're hurried and you play from where you are. So there is not much footwork because you don't have the time. The other important thing is trigger movement should be as small as possible, because bigger the trigger movement, chances of you being late and your head falling over and other things happening will be more. So just make sure it's nice and small and subtle, not jerky movements, not big movements, and also making sure your head stays as still as possible, because it's very, very important. Our eyes are like cameras. So if the camera is moving around, chances are the picture is not that clear. So even if it's front foot press or back and across or a second stance or whatever it is, just make sure it's predominantly lower body, not much of the upper body. Because I've seen a lot of players, they actually, when they go across or whatever their trigger movement is, they go with their head. So making sure your head does not move or moves very, very little. Most of that movement is from your lower body. These are the two very, very important things that you got to keep in mind. If you have a trigger movement, make sure it's done before the ball is delivered, so you have the time to move after. And secondly, making sure your head doesn't move. It's predominantly your lower body which gets your body into motion. Bad pickup. Well, I'm not a big believer of the pickup. Obviously, you want it to be as straight as possible, not very straight though, because the arc of the bat, it's a funny thing. It's never straight up and straight down. There'll be a bit of an arc, so it goes wide and it comes from inside. So if you think it's straight up and straight down, it generally is not. More often than not, there is a little bit of an arc, a little bit of a circle which happens there. So it goes up in a certain direction and it comes down from a little bit inside from there. So I'm not a big fan of how wide the pickup is. It can be from here, here, but the most important part is the downswing. The upswing is still all right, is manageable, but if the downswing is as wide as that, then obviously that creates a bit of a gap between bat and pad, and you'll be more often than not onside player. And to play on the offside, you have to move your bat around and play through the offside. So the downswing is important. The downswing has to be straight. The upswing, yeah, it can be wide. It can be wide, that's not a problem. But make sure it's not too straight, because if it's too straight, chances are the downswing would be from inside, and then it's a problem to play deliveries which are straight or on the onside. Chances of leg before increases manifold. So that's that. The other thing in the pickup is that what we were told for a very long time is a little bit of a cocking of the wrist that helps to play horizontal back shots, pull, cut. If you don't cock your wrist, if it's really straight, it's very difficult to get your bat on top of the bounce. So if you cock your wrist, it becomes easier to get on top of the bounce, whether you're playing a cut or a pull shot. So if it's possible, it's great. It's not mandatory. If you can't cock your wrist like that, it's fine. But you do a couple of things. Like I said, one, it helps to get on top of the bounce, and secondly, you get more power as well. So you bend all your levers, and then at the point of impact, all those levers, they straighten, so that'll give it more force into that shot. So pickup wise, be careful with the downswing. Upswing is manageable, but downswing has to be straight down. Well, playing a quick bowler, well, there are quite a few things that you got to keep in mind. Number one, obviously we spoke about the trigger movement. Just make sure that you finish with whatever trigger movement you have, whether it's front foot press or back and across, whatever it is, you finish before the ball is delivered. So it's very important in your mind you practice the trigger movement as soon as you see your bowler, because every bowler has a different action. Somebody would have a bigger jump, somebody wouldn't have a jump. So just make sure while you're there, the non-strikers and especially, you kind of figure that out. When do you start with your trigger movement, making sure you finish it before the ball is delivered. The other important thing, especially against quick bowlers, when the bowler's running in, let's say the bowler's got a longish run up, 15, 20 yards. I've seen a lot of batters who start focusing as soon as the bowler starts running from the top of his mark. Now what happens is, our concentration span is very, very short. So once the bowler starts and you're 100% focusing on the ball, chances are by the time he reaches or he delivers, you've lost your 100% concentration. So for that, what you can do is, yes, you're there, you're ready for the bowler when he starts running, but you're not, let's say 100%, you're like 95, 90%. But just before he reaches his delivery side, that's when, and you can kind of align it with your trigger movement, that's when you get 100% ready. That's when you're like, you're absolutely ready to face the ball. So a lot of players I've seen who get ready right at the top when the bowler is starting to run, and what happens is get very eager to play the ball and starts moving his head. A lot of actually players, when you see their heads falling, could be a technical thing or could be a mental thing. When they get ready early, or they're focusing way too early, and then they get very eager and their head starts falling over in the eagerness to play the ball. So yes, you start focusing, but not 100%. You start absolutely 100% concentration in roughly when you're starting your trigger movement, when the ball is somewhere near his delivery stride, or in his rather delivery stride. That's the second thing. The third thing is, I've seen a lot of players who are a little hesitant in deciding whether to go on the front foot or the back foot, because listen, anything too short, it's easy to decide. You pick it up early, right? Anything too full, again, you can see it, it's comparatively easier. It's that middle length, right? 6 meter, 7 meter length, the in-between length, or the good length as we call it. That's where the hesitation happens. Now, this is what I would suggest is, take a call early, whether it's front foot or back foot. You can make mistakes and you will make mistakes, but if you're committed, at least you're not wasting time moving your legs. So for example, a ball which you could have played off the back foot, but you're already committed on the front foot, it's easier to manage it with your hands from there rather than coming to your back foot or managing from that position again. So you definitely will be late there. Same with your back foot. Suddenly you've decided that you want to play it off the back foot, but you could have gone onto the front foot. Rather than again trying to adjust with the footwork, try and manage. So decide early, trust yourself. Don't worry, your hands will do the rest of the job, even if you've got the length wrong with your footwork. Picking up length. Well, we keep talking about picking up length early. Now, how do you do that? There are different ways of doing it. One of the best way of doing it is obviously watching the release. Watch the release. You get a lot of clues when you watch the release. Watch the seam of the ball, the release, when the ball's being released, whether it's an outswing, in swing, which side is the shine. The bowler's action itself, if it's a little open chested, chances are would be an in swinger. If it's more side on, it'll be an away swinger. So you get all these cues. So keep a very, very close eye on the release of the ball. Spinners, whether it's an off spinner, whether it's a straighter, a googly or a leg spin, you've got to look at the release of the ball watch the seam. There are quite a few drills from that perspective that you can do just to make sure you're looking at the release of the ball. And the other important thing is just try and figure out roughly a box, a 6 by 6 inch box where you think the ball will be released from. Keep a very, very close eye kind of that box, because that's where the ball is coming from. A lot of batters nowadays bat against the bowling machine. Well, if you're doing that, obviously you're seeing that release point. So make sure when you're playing a bowler as well, you kind of have this box somewhere, imaginary box, where you think the ball is going to come out from. So those are the things that you got to keep in mind in terms of picking up length early and adjusting if you have made a mistake, which you will. Everyone does. Then is the balance. Now, it's a very, very important thing. We keep hearing about it when you listen to commentary. He's got good balance, or he needs to improve on his balance. Now, the whole idea of balance is making sure your head, which is the heaviest part of your body, is within the base. The moment your head goes outside the base, whether it's of the back foot or front foot, you will be disbalanced, right? So making sure that box that you've created with your legs, with your footwork, your head stays within that box. The moment it goes outside the box, offside, leg side, behind, wherever, chances are your legs will move. It has to move to get your head back into that box. So the idea is making sure your head is inside that base. So that is for balance. And obviously what you also need to do is transfer of body weight. We keep talking about transfer of body weight. Now, the whole idea is you can keep your body weight behind and still play with your hands, but in this age of power, you need every bit of power possible when you're hitting a shot. So the idea is to get your body behind. So it's very important at the point of impact, your body weight goes in front if it's of the front foot. Back foot. A lot of people make this mistake of the back foot is the body weight, they take their body weight on the back foot. So moment your body weight completely goes on the back foot, and especially on the heel, you'll always be under the ball. You can never get on top of the ball, right? So even though you're playing off the back foot, the intention is to keep your head in front. You still want your body flow to go in front, even though you're on the back foot. But the idea is to make sure your body weight is still going in front. The moment your body weight goes behind, and especially on the heel, you're in big trouble. You'll be in no position to play any shot. Then you're kind of fending or defending and trying to protect yourself. So back foot, very important, is to stay on the toe and making sure your head is always trying to go forward towards the shot, whether it's there or if it's you're cutting it, you're pulling it, your head is always moving in front, your body weight is always trying to move in front, even though you're trying to play a shot off the back foot. Playing spin, obviously that's a major thing, right? One of the most important things to play spin, again, apart from the fact that whatever your trigger movement is, and ideally speaking, very few players, they have a very exaggerated trigger movement for spin. So more often than not, it's more like a front foot press, and that's about it. Very few people I've seen would go back and across to spin. So generally, if you have a trigger movement, if you want a trigger movement, stick with the front foot press with the spinners or against the spinners. Now, the most important part is to see the release of the spinner. He'll give you so many clues, obviously, in terms of whether the ball's turning, it's not turning, it's a straighter one, whether it's a googly or a leg spin. Release is imperative. So you have to pick up which way the ball will turn or might turn more often than not from the release point. The seam position, again, is a great indicator of whether the ball's going to turn or not. For example, an off spinner, if the seam is straight up, chances are it's not going to turn, it's going to go on straight with the arm. If it's somewhere towards the fine leg, it will turn. Side spin again, or undercut, if you can't see the seam nice and upright, chances are it'll fall on the leather part and it's going to skid through and it's not going to turn. So it's very, very important. The most important thing to play spin is to see the release, and you'll get almost 80-90%, if not 100% of the clues from the release point itself. Now, you've got to have one out of these 2 shots to be successful against spin. 1, stepping out. 2, or the other option rather, is the sweep. Let's start with the stepping out thing, attacking the spinner, because the chances are, if you don't use your feet, you're not stepping out or you're not sweeping, you're stuck and playing from the crease, you're gone. Very, very little chance. Now, for stepping out, the most important part is obviously to see the trajectory. And now, what we've been taught, and it's obviously is foolproof to a great extent, is the trajectory. If you see the ball actually going higher than the release point, then you know for sure it's a fuller delivery and it's slower, it has a bigger loop. You can reach it, you can use your feet. So practice that in the nets. Try and see if the ball, after releasing, has it gone over and above the line of the release point. So if it's gone up, try and see that. More often than not, you will be able to reach it by using your feet and get to the pitch of the ball. So that becomes very, very important. The other important thing is, against spin, you try and play with the spin. If you figure out it's an off spinner and it's going to turn, it's an off spin, then chances are, or you'll be better off trying to play it with the turn towards the onside rather than trying to play against the turn, right? That's what the bowler would want you to do. The spinner would want you to play against the turn. Same with a leg spinner. If you see it's a leg spinner, try not to play against the turn towards the onside, try and play with the turn towards the offside, unless it's a googly, obviously. If you have to play against the turn, the best shot, horizontal bat shot, right? So that's how we come to the second option, which is the sweep shot. And sweep shot is so dangerous because when do you sweep? You sweep, and which deliveries do you sweep? You sweep a good length delivery, right? So you go in front and you sweep a good length delivery. So that makes it that much more painful for the bowler, because the bowler's bowled a good ball, he's hit the right area, but he's still gone for runs. Now, for the sweep, there are so many things, but the most important part is obviously picking up the line and the length. That goes without saying. And then the other thing is, I've seen a lot of batters whose body weight stays behind. So when the body weight stays behind, and as you can see, my head is behind right now, I will never get on top of, chances I will not get on top of the bounce. I'll always get under the bounce. And secondly, I don't have my pads on, but when I have my pads, my hands will be here, somewhere here where the pads are. So they will be restricted. The bat flow will be restricted. Now, for me to have a good clean swing of the bat, I'll have to get my head over my front leg so I can reach the ball and have a free access to the ball with my hands, right? The moment my head is back, my hands, even though they are outstretched, will always be restricted with the pads, and I'll be hitting under the ball, not over the ball. So if you're hitting in the air, a slog sweep, that's fine. Then you have to kind of keep your body weight back to get under the ball. But a good sweeper would have that ability to choose and play the shot that he would want to, whether it's slog, under, or over. So for over, you've got to get your head on top of the ball or in front of your front leg, making sure the bat swing comes from up to down on top of the bounce, so you can keep the ball along the ground and control your shot. For that, obviously, like I said, bat goes up and your head stays in front of the front leg, so your hands have easy access to the ball. So these are things you can practice, these two shots. You can have drills, you can ask somebody to chuck balls, and you can sweep. Obviously in the nets you try and do that. In the nets you try and see the trajectory and use your feet and practice that. So these are things that you've got to do, at least one of them. If you have both, then you're a champion player against spin, without a question. The other thing is, now, wrist spinners. There are a lot of wrist spinners, and there might be days where you have not, you're not picking the wrist spinner. You can't figure out the googly. For example, Rashid Khan is a great example. It's very difficult to pick his googly. So one of the first things that you do is you try and play everything as an incoming delivery. Because if you look at it, then you play percentage cricket. Now, what is percentage cricket? If you're playing everything that is coming into you, you're protecting your stumps, you're protecting leg before wicket, right? The only thing you still kind of might not be protecting yourself against would be the outside edge. Now, if you're playing for a leg spin or anything which is leaving you, then chances are you've exposed yourself to leg before, bowled, and all other sorts of dismissals. So if you haven't, or you're struggling to pick a bowler, a leg spinner or a wrist spinner particularly, you try and play for the ball coming into you rather than ball leaving you. Chances are if it'll turn and you're playing inside the line, you'll get beaten, right? Now with the advent of DRS, gone are the days where you could actually use your foot or your leg as a second, a second source of protection or second line of protection. It's all about bat. So it is very important nowadays to actually pick as much as possible from the release point which side the ball might turn, and try and play ahead of your pad, right? Of your pad, but making sure your head is on top of the ball, because the moment your head falls back and your body weight is somewhere in between or behind, chances are, look at my bat face, right? We want that bat face to be acute, so that even if you don't hit it on the middle of the bat, because of the bat angle, it will not carry to silly point or short leg or slips for that matter. But the moment my body weight is back and my bat face is a lot straighter, then chances are they will carry, right? So the idea is to get on top of the ball, keeping my bat angle acute as much as possible, so that even though you don't hit it out of the middle, they don't carry. Right, the last and again a very, very important thing to play spin is you can't play spin from the crease. You can't have a small stride forward or try and play from the crease. You can't do that. You can manage that against the quicker bowlers, but against spin, you've got to be very, very clear in what you want to do with your footwork. Either it's a good stride forward, try and reach there with your foot, the pitch of the ball, and smother the spin. Or if you can't do that, making sure you use the depth of the crease. You can't possibly be caught playing from the crease, because then you're gone. Against good spinners, especially on tracks which are turning a bit, helping the spinners a bit, it'll be very difficult to manage from the crease. So either you got to decide and be very clear in front, or if the pitch is slow and the bowler is bowling short, back foot. Back foot, another very, very important thing. You can't be in Bengali we call it jorapa. That means off the back foot you can't have both your feet together. That goes both for the quick bowlers and the spinners especially. The quick bowlers you don't have enough time, but because with spinners you have time, I've seen a lot of international players playing off the back foot with both their feet together, because what happens is when both your feet are together, you're stuck. You can't go anywhere, you can't maneuver. And especially I've seen a lot of people playing like that to off spinners, and suppose the ball's turning back into you, you're stuck, you can't do anything. So it's very important for, especially against spinners, when you go on the back foot, you keep yourself an option, an exit policy, so to say. If the ball turns back into you, even though you're looking to play through the offside, but it comes back to you, you can quickly adjust. But the moment you've got both your feet together, you've got nowhere to go. So especially against spin, if you're playing off the back foot, just make sure you're a little open, you're not overtly side on, and you have space enough to adjust if it comes back into you. Power hitting, right? I mean, everyone's talking about power, hitting sixes and how far you can hit. There have even been suggestions of, if somebody hits a 100-yard six, it should be 8 runs, not 6. So it is a very, very essential part of cricket nowadays. So it's important that you get the technique right. It's not about just brute force. It is also about technique. One of the biggest mistakes that people make while power hitting is opening up the body too early. Because you want to hit very hard, chances are, and we keep talking about it on air, you must have heard a lot of times commentators talking about losing shape. Now, what exactly is losing shape? So the idea is, if you open up early, then you're only hitting with your bottom hand. So what happens, look at me now, what happens if I've opened my front foot? Obviously I want to access the ball, I want a free path for my bat, that is fine. But if my front shoulder also opens up, right, and I'm trying to hit straight, my shoulder's already gone there. So I'm not getting any power from the front part of my body, the front portion of my body. So all I'm doing is hitting with my bottom hand. So chances of you going wrong, trying to hit with an open body like that, are massive, and chances are you will slice it. You see a lot of batters slicing it. It's because they open up early and they are just slicing it with their bottom hand, and that's a big issue. So the idea is to keep that shape intact, and when I say shape, is you don't open up your body. Even if you open up your front foot for the accessing the ball, but your upper body is still closed. The moment you open that up, you're in trouble. So keep that body closed. You know, it's so much like baseball. You've seen a baseball batter, they don't open up when they hit those huge home runs. They keep it nice and side on. So what happens is then you're using your front portion of the body, your core muscle is kind of now, it's coiled right now. And at the point of impact, it opens up and it uncoils. So you're using your front portion of the body, your core, and obviously your bottom hand as well, and the back side of your body, or the latter part of your body into the shot as well. So just make sure when you're practicing power hitting, you're not opening up too early. You're closed, your upper body is specially side on, and only at the point of impact will it open up for your bottom hand and your back foot to come through, or you know, so you get more power. So just make sure that you keep that shape going. As I said, even though your front foot opens up and goes towards the leg side, your upper body is still closed. It doesn't open with that front foot. And if you really want to hit hard, just make sure your front foot as well, it doesn't open up like that. If you want to hit it straight, that is, not on the not behind square. If you're planning to hit cow's corner, mid on, mid off, or long on, long off, you keep it close so your hips are closed as well. So moment this goes up, out, your front toe, your hips open as well. They tend to open. It'll be very difficult to keep your hips closed with a toe opening like that. So if you can, keep it closed so your hips are closed, you're still side on, and then at the point of impact, obviously you go. Again, baseball, golf. Have you seen a golfer trying to hit a long drive, opening up a foot like that? No, they don't. They keep it shut because they want to coil the core and then uncoil at the point of impact, right? So that's what happens. They want to keep it side on and get as much power and as much body behind the shot as possible. So the most important thing for power hitting is not losing your shape, as I mentioned, keeping it for as long as possible, and then kind of unraveling it or uncoiling it at the point of impact.
Whenever a batsman is not performing or is out of form, there could be a couple of things going wrong, but the chances are almost 85 to 90% of the time there is something wrong in his or her setup. Setup means your grip, stance, and backlift. Okay, so first thing, if the red line is a popping crease, now the first thing I need to make sure is my feet are in line in my stance. Now, I don't want to be crossed like that, because if I'm here, I'm emailing, texting, faxing the bowler that I will not be able to play balls on middle and leg stump. At the same time, if I'm like this open, then I'm telling the bowler that his main channel I can't play. Okay, so I got to get a balance. And the balance is to make sure that my feet are in line so that my head is in line and the shoulders in line with the stumps at the non-striker's end. Now, I'll take examples of two players, and if you go and watch them, one is a current player, one is an ex-player, but both come from the same place in India, Karnataka. And one is Rahul Dravid and one is KL Rahul, the current Indian player. And if you see them in their stance, constantly they keep this head towards the non-striker end stumps. So why they do it is from this position, when the ball is being released and they move to the ball, that shoulder goes in line with the bowler. If the shoulder is locked up too early, when it goes, the shoulder starts going to mid off, which you don't want. So it's really important in your setup that your feet are in line, head, shoulder towards stumps at the non-striker end. After that comes the grip. Now, the top hand grip is important, but more important is the bottom hand grip. So what we need with a bottom hand grip is a V, which sits between the outside edge of the bat and the splice of the handle. So this is the V we're talking about. Now, if my grip is right, when I turn the bat handle or bat face, that handle will be in line with my forearm. If the grip turns and I turn it, now see where the handle is in relation to my forearm. It cannot happen. Okay, the moment that happens, this side loads up, bottom hand loads up, shoulder go upward that way, bat face closes, disaster happens. Now, top players won't get into this shape, but they will still close the face, they'll go a bit legs offside of the ball, head will tilt, they will play at balls outside of stump, which normally they would have left alone. Okay, so it's really important to get this stance part and the grip right. And then I have an analogy, you might like it, you might not like it, which is the left hand on my top hand is the butcher's hand. Okay, so I hold it really tight. The bottom hand is a painter's hand. You don't paint holding a brush like that. So you know how light the painter's brush is held. So bottom hand is light, top hand is tight, and the ideal grip is the perfect marriage between the butcher and the painter. Well, what that helps to do is to control the bat with the top hand, and the bottom hand then works as a guide to when we want to open the face, when we want to drop the ball. On the leg side, the bottom hand comes into play a bit more when we are trying to access mid-on, mid-wicket, wideish mid-wicket. But the bat has got a full face whenever it is coming on its downswing. The bat has got full access to the ball. The bat face is not closing. I'm not playing with a stump. And I'm not only accessing wideish mid-on to mid-wicket. I can play all round the wicket. Now, if my grip is right, it's quite easy to pick the bat up right, because what we need to do is just cock the top hand wrist to make sure that the bat gets the blessing of God here and then comes down. Now, it's really important, this bat going up here, because what it does is it gives me the ability to do quite a few things. A, I can hit the ball, time the ball well, which means the ball will go hard. Secondly, it allows me to play the ball on merit, which means that I can play the ball according to the length, according to the pace, according to the movement, where I want to. I'm not at mercy of the bowler and go into his area and do that. Because if I don't pick the bat up, and I make no heel contact, I'm going to go and do that. I'm going to go hard hands, I'm going to nick off. I'm going to have no balance, no control. So it's really important that when I pick the bat up, right, so I'm going in this position or this position. So the bat is up. One other important point is about the picking up of the bat is, if my grip is right and I pick the bat up the right way, what you'll find is this part opens up and my right elbow tip points to fine leg. What that does is, again, gives me full blade access to the ball. Okay, now the moment that grip turns and becomes like this, then look what happens when I pick the bat up. So my elbow tip has gone to backward square leg or long leg. Now when that happens, the moment the bat passes my right thigh, the bat face is going to be closed. I'm going to choke the bat. My weight is going to be here. I'm going to chip the ball up, I'm going to play with a stump, and all sorts of batting problems start creeping in. Okay. We're going to talk about playing spin. And if you want to break it down, the spinner is going to bowl 3 balls. A good length ball, a full ball, or a short ball. There's only 3 types of balls a spinner can bowl. Now, a spinning ball is like a poisonous snake, right? So if I'm going to play forward to the spinner, what I got to make sure is I kill the ball and smother the spin so there is no place for the ball to spin. So if it's a poisonous snake, I hit the snake on the head. So that's the first part. If I have to defend, I need to make sure I'm right on top of the ball. Second part is I play the ball after the ball has spun and I use the crease. So if the ball is coming this way, I go here. If the ball is going this way, I go here. I can also go and play into the spin or go and play into the spin if my footwork is right. Now, there are a couple of things you got to understand. When you have men around the bat, so slip, silly point, short leg, what is the main danger when you have those 2 guys? Now, a lot of times, spinners have these 2 guys for psychological pressure, okay? Now, if you are growing up in the subcontinent and you have to come up the ranks, you just get used to playing with men around the bat, okay? You start ignoring them after some time. You don't even realize they're there, because what your main job is to make sure that if I'm going to be hit on the pad, the ball hits the pad below my knee roll. If the ball hits the pad below the knee roll, right, even if I get a nick on the pad, that is not going to carry to silly point, short leg. The difficult one is when I go here, have bat and pad close together, ball turns, gets a nick, hits the knee roll and up, then I'm done. So I have to make sure that when I'm playing on the front foot, I get that much close to the ball that if the ball hits me on the pad, obviously LBW is a different question, but to avoid those 2 guys, I got to make sure that I'm as close to the ball and the ball hits me below the knee roll, not knee roll and upward. So that is one main thing. Second part is extending this top hand, because the moment you extend the top hand, your bottom hand grip becomes loose and you don't prod at the ball. You go with soft hands. So the ball hits the bat, it literally dies. You know a batsman has played a spinner well on the front foot defense. When you see it on TV, they play it and just give it to the city point or the keeper like that. You see it a lot in Test cricket when a good player is batting. Okay, when you are defending and the ball is going to extra cover or mid-wicket, that is bad batting. If you drive, that's different. But if you are defending a ball to a spinner and the ball is racing to the mid-wicket in the circle, that is terrible batting. That is top bottom hand squeezed grip. So that is not going to make you survive on a turning track against a quality spinner. And then you have to be really light and quick on your feet. A lot of people, batsmen who travel to the subcontinent, struggle because the patience factor is very low. So you have to bat time. You can't go and think that I'm going to score a runner ball on a turning wicket in a red ball game. It's not going to happen if decent bowlers are bowling. So you have to bide your time at the wicket. The more you bat, the longer you bat, you will get used to it. You'll get balls to score off. The other point about moving against a spinner is you do not move early. So when a good spinner bowls, the ball's shape is the shape of a parabola, right? Now, you do not move, you can trigger, but you don't make your final movement when the ball is going up. If you make your final movement when the ball is going up, you're going to be a sitting duck, because after that you can't do anything. So you have to wait till the ball has reached its peak and about to drop to make the correct movement late and quick once you have judged the length of the ball. That is how you go about playing spin. One thing that makes playing spin quite difficult nowadays compared to previously is the advent of the DRS. So which means that previously, during the times we played first class cricket, if you couldn't read a bowler, right, it was okay to go forward, play the ball and hide the bat inside, and no umpire would give you out on the front foot if you almost bluffed the umpire into believing that you are still playing a shot. The only time they would give you out is if you try to sweep and missed it. However, with the DRS, that has become a bit difficult, because now, in olden times, if the ball was turning away from us, we were not bothered about the ball coming in. We only made sure that we covered the turning ball. But now you have to cover both edges. So which means a lot of people are staying leg side of the ball to make sure that they don't get hit on the pads. So that's something which has crept into the art of batting over the last few years, especially after the advent of the DRS. Now, how can you practice that? There's a way to practice that as well. So what you got to do is, if you have got access to a coir matting wicket or a surface where the ball grips and turns, you can bat on that with a newish ball where someone is throwing spin, where the ball is spinning, and you have to play without your front pad. If you do that, that's a very common practice in India, by the way. If you do that, what happens is this movement becomes really quick, and this shortening of the front foot becomes quick, because if someone is throwing spin hard at you, you're not going to stand there and get hit on your knee. That's quite simple. So that's your defense mechanism kicking in, and then makes your footwork really quick towards the ball or coming in here and playing the ball. So this is what can be done to negate the DRS, as well as playing the ball a bit more in front, which we all used to do initially. We never played bat and pad together. We played bat in front, which again helps to negate DRS, along with the fact that when you land your front toe, you need to make sure that the toe is open and not locked.
I'm just going to quickly talk about the setup, the way we should set up. So the first thing about the guard is that making sure that I want to know where my feet are going to be lined up. So for example, I take middle stump guard, so my feet will be, my right foot will be on middle, and my left foot will be slightly on leg stump. I want to make sure that everything is all lined up and my head is over this front foot of mine, which will enable me then to either go forward or I can actually go and push back. And that's so important. That's facing a right arm bowler. So it's really important to make sure when my head does come forward, I can go into the shot better, or if it is short, I can push back here and everything's all in a nice straight line. I'm just gonna show you two demos. So with our setup, make sure our setup is right in here. So what we're gonna try and do is make sure that we get our head and shoulders going into the ball, and we make ourselves a really nice high back. Our hands are nice and high, and then we can execute the ball nice and straight. I'm gonna play two shots here. I'm gonna put one ball on the floor, and then I'm gonna drop one afterwards here. So again, making sure that our setup's nice and straight, head is going towards the ball. So we're gonna go from position 1 to position 2, and then we're gonna get our weight going into the ball nice and straight. And really important to be nice and still in contact of the ball. And I did not move there, my back foot was nice and still. And we do it again by progressing it. We can actually drop the ball. This time we'll drop it again here, and then we're nice and straight again, getting our weight going into the ball there again. So it's all about transferring that weight going into the ball, and they're getting those hands nice and high so we can execute the ball, get those hands nice and high, execute it, and get those hand speed through the ball. So for me, it's really important to make sure that when you're slightly open with your stance, you've actually got more options to play the ball between mid-off, extra cover, mid-on and mid-wicket. But if you are closed off, then what tends to happen is that you can only play on the offside. And some players have a tendency by doing that. The reason they can, some of them are parallel, is because their head is a lot straighter. But when you get a lot of young players playing, you know, we want to make sure that they're able to actually play both sides of the wicket. So if we talk about a left armer bowling, left armer over bowling to a right hand batter, you want to make sure that your alignment's a lot straighter once again. So you're actually looking towards the bowler again rather than closing off. And if you close off, you're going to obviously get yourself into trouble. So it's making sure that the lines are a lot straighter once again. And once again, I always say left arm is the hardest to play because you need to know where your off stump is, where the angle of the ball going away. But at the same time, you are going to get balls in your legs here that you can actually work into the gap and clip through there. But that is so important. I think the best way of playing left armers as well is making sure that you don't get hit on this pad. You can't get across this pad. By doing that, you want to try and get your back coming in front of yourself and playing a lot straighter in here. Or if it's there, you can actually get your head going this way. You can maneuver the ball into that gap. But more importantly, you want to be looking to hit that ball coming nice and straight where the ball's coming from. We're going to move on now. We're going to talk about playing against spin. So we want to try and change our stance slightly. And the reason we want to change our stance, because normally when we play against the seam bowlers and the quicker bowlers, our feet are a little bit closer because we can still be a little bit on our feet here, playing forward and back. When you're playing the spinners, you want to get down a little bit lower, so you widen your feet, so that actually you can be a bit more, you can get to the ball quickly if you are going to be moving, and then you can actually rock back as well here to play the ball. So just being a little bit more dynamic on our feet when we're playing spin. So the movements are really important. We can actually get to the ball quickly by making a big stride first, to a small stride to get to the ball. Or secondly, we can use the depth of the crease in here to play that pull shot. And try not to play it off the pitch. If you can, try and watch the ball out of the hand, which makes it easier for yourselves, rather than picking it off the pitch here, which is always a little bit difficult. You've got to be a lot quicker. And the thing that I like to see a lot of young players do, or general players do, is move their feet, get to the pitch of the ball and try and look to either maneuver the ball or look to try and be really destructive, really look to score and hit through the grounds as much as they can. So if they want to go aerial, they can hit the side screen. If they're not quite there, they can actually look at manoeuvring the ball into the gaps by using those wrists of theirs. So we always talk about movements, being quick on your feet. So the quicker you are on your feet, the better position that you'll get yourself into. The slower you're on your feet, then you become a little bit rushed. And that's why people get stuck on the crease as well when that happens. And that's why they get beaten by pace, because they're not quick enough.
So for me, as an opening batsman, I'm most likely going to be facing seamers trying to swing the ball back into me primarily. So for me as a left-hander, and for anyone really, the most important thing is having access to the ball. Now that doesn't mean where you stand necessarily. I think everyone has a different setup, but what's important is where you end up at point of delivery. So as far as I'm concerned, you can stand like this, like George Bailey, or you can stand like this, like Shiv Chanderpaul. But at the time when the ball is coming out of the bowler's hand, it's important to be able to access the ball, be in a relatively side-on position, to be able to stay square on and access the ball, and be in a position where you can actually meet the ball and give it the full face of the bat. So I try and keep things relatively simple and stand in the position that I want to be at the point of delivery. Got a nice high backlift. We'll come back to that later in my reasonings for that. And then I have a little trigger which really aims to just put me back in the same position. I don't want to be moving across and opening up, or I don't want to change the alignment too much in my trigger. So that's why I keep it relatively how I want it to be, and then keep my hips and my chest pretty much the same as I would in my stance, but just get a little bit of movement to be able to go back into the ball at point of delivery. In terms of guards, as I spoke about earlier, setting up for someone bowling right arm over, trying to swing it back into me, it kind of depends on what the bowler is trying to do. If it's swinging quite a lot, then I'll come across a little bit more. I think it's different for everyone. For me, it works better because coming across a little bit more and standing on middle, triggering across to middle and off, front foot on middle, means that I know that my back foot is on sort of covering off, and that anything outside my eye line I can leave. And I know that I'm looking to hit through mid-on, through to straight-ish mid-wicket, and that will cover me. I'm not really looking to drive through the offside for someone who's trying to swing it back into me and is swinging big. If, for instance, it starts to swing a little bit less, and I know that the offside becomes a little bit more of an option, and I know that it's not really going to hoop back and hit my off stump as I'm trying to leave it, I'll come back a little bit more, stand on middle and leg, and my trigger hopefully will take me to middle and off, just a back toe covering middle and off, and then I can play slightly straighter, more through mid-off, and if the bowler loses his action, throws it out wide, I know that I can actually, if it's full enough, access the covers a bit more as well. And also it brings one of my strengths into play, which is like back foot through the offside, whereas if it's swinging in big from off stump, then I'd be putting that away and I wouldn't be looking to play through the offside at all. One of the most common dismissals, especially for left-handers, but I think it's relevant for pretty much everyone, especially when it's swinging and seaming, is leg before wicket. And more often than not, that's because of balance, which is related to head position. They both sort of go together. For me, the biggest revelation was changing my mindset in terms of not thinking about going towards the ball, but keeping my weight on my heels a little bit more as a left-hander, because I've got the ball coming back into me quite a lot. It really helped me to think about keeping everything together, keeping my weight on my heels, which means that I'm pushing off my foot and going back down the pitch. And I know that, because I know that I'm standing quite a long way across anyway, I know that I'm covering off stump, I don't need to go further that side, because as soon as the ball swings back in, I'm going that way to meet it, and it's coming the other way. So you end up playing across yourself, hit in front of all three, heads this side of your bat, and suddenly you're walking back. So it helped me a lot to just instead try and focus on aligning to mid-on a little bit more, keeping my weight on my heels, and then I know that I'm going that way. If the ball starts to swing back in, I know that my head's still here, and I'm still this side of it. If it does swing, then I'm balanced in here. And if it doesn't swing, then I know that I can, if it's really wide, I can leave it. And if it's a little bit closer, and if it's full enough, I know that with my head this side of me, I can still let my hands go and either open my wrists to get it through square on the offside, or just let my hands go through the ball and hit it back straighter. It's a little bit more trust. It's a little bit more about letting your hands do the work, but I trust that this will give me a better knowledge of where my off stump is, and I know that I'll be less vulnerable to getting out leg before wicket, going across my stumps. When it comes to batting and going up through the age groups, I'd always been told that your top hand should control. Your top hand should be in control, your top hand should be dominant, and your bottom hand should just be guiding it. But for me, what really struck a chord was when one of my coaches in junior cricket, Paul Johnson, told me that it doesn't really matter which hand is controlling. Ideally, both your hands should be working together. But what's important is that you're giving the ball the full face of the bat, making contact and having the widest area available. And then if you're doing that, it doesn't really matter which hand's in control, because the ball's going where you want it to go and it has full access to the face of the bat. So you can, if you look at international cricket now, you see Steve Smith, who holds the bat like that. Virat Kohli holds the bat like that, very bottom hand dominant. They still have their top hands there, but their bottom hand, even though it's dominant, still gets the ball into the direction that they want it to go. So even though they're hitting through the offside, their bottom hand goes all the way around and they actually give it the full face and hit through the line of the ball. And then you have, your traditional players. I can't think of an example off the top of my head, but Joe Root, for example, would be a good one because he's very orthodox. He'll be right there. He'll have his high front elbow, and he'll still hit the same area. He'll still hit the same shot. Ultimately, it's not about which hand is in control. It's about giving it the full face and being in control and hitting the ball where you want it to go. When it comes to backlift, again, similar to stance and setup that we spoke about earlier, I don't think it's particularly important where you start with, as long as when the ball is released, it comes back down from the right angle. And even with that, people will have their different ways of doing that. Some will start off here, Steve Smith will start off here and come back around. Hashim Amla was like there, but started from gully, but when it actually came down to it, it came back round. I think that's the important thing. It doesn't matter, you don't have to stand like this, or stand like that, stick hook in here, or it doesn't really matter where you start as long as when the ball's coming down, then it comes from somewhere in the region of off stump through to first slip. And the reason for that is because that backlift gives you access to the ball on top of off, that you can give it the full face. And then if it's slightly further this way, more towards your legs, then you can still have access. Ultimately with backlift, that's what it comes down to. About how high your bat should be, I think you would have seen players from around the world going from Kane Williamson, who starts with it quite low, Virat Kohli, who comes from way up high here. Ultimately, it comes down to preference and what feels comfortable, but you can weigh up the options and weigh up the strengths and weaknesses of each different backlift style. For me personally, I like to have my bat facing my bat face facing to a sort of point or just behind point, because I think it allows me to have my hands where I want them, which is right behind the bat. Again, that's a preference like we spoke about earlier, but I think for me, having my backlift coming from there allows me to have my hands in a comfortable position. The height also for me, I like to have a relatively high backlift, although watching my footage back, as anyone does really, I discovered that even though my hands start up here, when the ball is running in at the point of delivery, they're back down a little bit, and that's completely fine as well. I think for me, it's important to have them slightly further back because I think it makes me play the ball later. Whereas when I was younger, and I used to have my bat here and out in front like this, to have that really strong front shoulder, it meant that it didn't quite give me the balance. So I was out here reaching for the ball because my hands didn't really have a chance to go back. But it works differently for everyone. Like I said before, it's all about where your hands are at the point of release and how much rhythm you feel you have in your batting. When you're not quite in nick and you are getting out in ways that you don't want to, or the ball is going not quite where you want it to go, sometimes the backlift is where things creep in. For me, the biggest one that tends to happen is when someone's not in nick and trying to go at the ball too hard, your hands go out that way. And if your hands do that, it does two things. It drags your head that way, and suddenly your balance is all out, and you end up going across your stumps and getting out LBW. Or the bat comes across the line of the ball like this, and you end up either nicking off or missing the ball again, swinging in. So one of my checkpoints is, with my backlift, is just making sure that when it ultimately comes down to it, your bat is still nice and close to your body and coming from in here rather than out here away from your body. So playing against spin, I've had a little bit of a strange relationship with playing against spin because I grew up in Pakistan, and coming to the UK as a 15-year-old, my mindset against spin was to just take it on. And it didn't quite work because I think there are certain things that are very different here. Over here, spin is used more as a defensive option. And a lot of the time, because of pitches, particularly as you go up through the levels in better second 11 grounds and first class cricket, it starts to spin less and less. So it becomes more about playing for the ball that doesn't spin than to actually play against the ball that's dragging. So you've almost got to have two completely different sets of technique for playing on a, for example, a skiddy pitch in April that's going on with the arm compared to in September when the grounds have dried out and it's starting to actually turn. The most important thing that translates well across any type of surface, any type of bowler, for me is feet. And we talk a lot about seamers and how when you're facing pace, feet movement isn't as important as being in the right position and having your weight going in the right direction. When it comes to playing against spin, I think feet become a lot more important, and it becomes really important to be proactive and decisive in either moving forward or moving back. So my setup is relatively similar, but again, I'm not thinking too much about having a high backlift. My hands are nice and neutral, nice and low. I have a little bit more of a press because I want to make sure that I don't get stuck in here. Because as soon as you get stuck in here, if the ball's skidding on with the arm, nowhere to go, hit in front of the wickets. Against an off spinner, that's so common to see, like left-handers get out LBW to off spinners against balls that don't spin. So I'll stand on a middle leg, try and keep my front foot relatively out of the way, have a decent stride in for my press, but then again, not so much that you get stuck there, you should be able to go again. And then I'm playing in here for the ball against an off spinner. I'm looking to hit mid-off through to extra cover, but I'm playing almost in to out, making sure that my bat is in front. When it comes to a left arm spinner, again, say the ball's not spinning as much, I'll stand on probably middle, come across to off. I'm slightly more open. I know that if the ball's not spinning that much, I can just leave anything outside off. If it gets too full, I can drive it, but don't want to be too cute in the areas that I'm driving. I still want to give it the full face, maybe hit through extra cover rather than the big gap through the offside that's normally there. So earlier we spoke about playing against an off spinner when it's not spinning as much and when he's trying to skid the ball on, try and hit you on the pad to get you out LBW. Now I want to speak a little bit more about when the ball starts to actually turn a little bit more and you have both edges in play. So if the ball spins, you have the outside edge in play, and if it doesn't, you have your pad in play. I think when that starts to happen, the key thing that becomes really important is, again, footwork. So trying to get out as far as possible. But the other thing that becomes really important is having your bat out in front, because you don't want to be in a situation where if you're closed off in here, then if the ball doesn't spin, you have short leg in play. You want to meet it nice and you want to meet it out front so that your bat is covering your pad, and so that if the ball does spin, if it spins big, it'll beat you on the outside, and you don't really mind that because as long as you're not going at it and it's not taking your edge, you're still there, you're still in control. And if it doesn't, then you meet it with the full face of your bat, or you get an inside edge, goes through to square leg, and you get off strike. When it comes to those sorts of situations, though, the worst thing you can do is just hang around waiting for a ball that's going to get you out. And then that's when it becomes really important to know what your options are. The other thing that becomes really important is, I think when it starts to spin a little bit more, it becomes more about hitting square with the spin and with your cross-batted shots, rather than trying to force the ball to straight, almost going against the spin. In modern day cricket, playing against spin, it's no longer, even in 4-day cricket, it's not really just about trying to survive. I think scoring runs is really important. When it comes to 1-day cricket in particular, I think people, you have to have an option, and whether that's to get off strike or whether that's to score a boundary. And for me, that tends to be the sweep. For you, it might be different. It might be going over the top. It might be slog sweeping. It might be reverse sweeping. But as long as you have something and you've practiced it enough, I think that's fine. So when it comes to playing the sweep shot, I'll just talk about, I won't go into too much detail, I'll just talk about a couple of things that I find really help me. And for me, the most important thing is making sure that I'm not getting too far ahead, because if I go too far ahead, then my head's back, and then my foot gets in the way of my bat, and then playing across the line. For me, it's really important to line up with my head, have access to the ball, and be in a position where I can get my hands out to the ball and give it the full face of the bat. And then if you can get into that position, and then you can either go fine by just putting your bat out like that, or you can hit almost 360. When it gets to, when you get a little bit further on, you want to reverse sweep, you can do it from the same position as well. So we've talked a little bit about like the basic technical stuff. We've talked about setup, backlift. We've talked about some of the tips and tricks to problem solve in terms of techniques. But I wanted to talk to you guys about how to actually play the game. And for me, your setup is a good starting point, but you've got to be dynamic in terms of how you're going against that bowler. You've got to think about how he's trying to get you out, and then it's really important to like back yourself to make changes within the game to know how you're going to compete with the problem. And that could be a mental change, or it could be a technical change. That could be a change to try and put the bowler off. For example, you would have seen a lot of international players will come down the track at the bowler to try and put him off his length. Kevin Peterson talks about targeting a team's best bowler, hitting Dale Steyn back down the ground over his head to send a message, and that's how he plays the game. For me personally, I have a few little things that I just do normally. So for example, as soon as a bowler would go around the wicket, I know that I come across from standing on middle and leg to standing on middle, and then I trigger across to off, and then I know that I have access to the ball going through here, and he's not going to get me with one that swings back late, and I know that I'm still covering my off stump because I've come across. Or I know that if the keeper comes up and it's nibbling around, not that much space to work with, I know that if I want to put the bowler off his length, then even with the keeper up, I might come down the track and knock him down. And that's just taking calculated risks, because in the long term, you trust that it will pay off. So it's really important not to get too stuck in the technical side of things. Your technique is there, but really it's just a starting point. If you know that the bowler can't swing the ball back in, and he's only swinging away from you, and you know that you can cheat it a little bit. You can, rather than standing with a really open stance, set up for the ball coming back in, you close yourself off a bit, and you know that you won't get squared up as much. And you'll keep your position much better, and you can stay this side. As soon as he loses his line, you get him away through backward point. But the danger in cricket, because it's such a mental sport, is getting too lost in the weeds of technique and forgetting about what the actual game is, hitting the ball with the bat, trying to score runs.
I think so. One thing I would say from my point of view, is I'm really keen on encouraging players to learn how to move properly and to incorporate all the movement into all their cricket. So what we do, I believe, at times as coaches, is break movements down too great, into too much detail. So we break it down into a position as a batsman that might happen for like a split second of time. So I'm really keen on trying to encourage movement in batsmen. And as long as the movement is aligned towards their target, then that's fantastic. So I'll give you an example, for instance. So if I was doing down the wicket stuff against spin, most people would coach people to come down the wicket and stop and hit the ball, a bit like this. So they'd come down, get to the pitch, stop and hit the ball. But all that for me is doing is, if you're coming down the pitch, you've got to come down and generate some speed. You've got to come down and get to the pitch quickly. So if you're looking to stop before you get to the pitch, all you're going to do is slow down before that point. Because to stop, you have to start, there has to be a slowing down process. So what I encourage in our players is to come down and to keep the movement going through the ball, which as long as they're aligned and they're controlled, they can do really easily, and it keeps momentum, it gives them speed, and it can help them generate power. So for instance, a slight difference than the way I would expect them to do it is to come down and move through the ball when they hit the ball. And that, like I said, as long as it's controlled. So my main fundamentals of batting would be rhythm, balance and alignment. And the balance and alignment one are very much come hand in hand, because balance is never still in any sport. It is always moving. There's not a sport in the world where someone is absolutely static. So it's not about being balanced on one leg and being still. It's about controlling your body while it's moving. So the best way to do that is to make sure that everything's going towards its target, and as long as that movement is in a line, a straight line towards where you're wanting to go. So if it's down the pitch, if you're coming down the pitch, and generally I would say it's towards the stumps at the bowler's end is a good starting point. As long as movement happens there, then you can be controlled and everything can go towards your target and you're all good. Another example would be, people talk a lot about creating a base. My challenge to that would be, for me, a base, if you think about a base of anything is very static. So if I'm thinking about a base, a tripod has a base, that set of stumps has a base, and it's all very, very static, it's very stationary. In batting, we don't want to be stationary, we want to have controlled movement. So I don't like the word base. And my challenge to anybody who talks about base as being really important would be, there are so many people, and I can show you so many images of players who play off one leg, or who play a back foot punch against a pace bowler, and they play it with both feet off the ground. So our obsession with base, and most people would say, yeah, but they're in a base before they jump and before they move. But why would we be bothered about that? If it's only for a split second at a time, why aren't we thinking about creating movement and allowing people to hit the ball off one leg, or to hit the ball with both feet in the ground, in the air, and have all that lovely movement and control that movement? So a good example would be, for leg side play, I would encourage people to play and allow their body to move through the ball. So people would talk a lot about opening out, keeping that back foot still and hitting the ball towards mid-on. But for me, that just creates too stationary a position, and people will end up playing with this back leg as an anchor. People will end up playing across their front pad because the weight is back here and is stationary. So what I would encourage would be to hit the ball and allow that right side and their body weight to go down the pitch. So if you're playing off your pads, you start off in a fairly side-on position, and you want to hit the ball in this way, you can't stay side-on. You're always going to end up in a front-on position with your weight going this way. So I would just encourage them to hit and let that right side come through the ball, so that they are accessing the ball in front of their body. And as long as their head's going down the pitch, the problems you'll see would be if they're going this way, then that'd be an issue. But as long as their weight's going down the pitch, you're happy. I would say in general, there'd be lots of coaches out there who have players who fall over. It's a common thing. I don't think you can stop someone falling over. What you need to do is get them to get their weight going in the direction that you want it to go. So it's a bit like if you say don't think of a pink elephant, everyone thinks of a pink elephant. So what we want is, if you say stop falling over, well, they can't stop falling over. What you need to do is find ways of getting them to get their weight going this way more rather than that way. And great things that you can use would be a TheraBand. So if I spat here and you pull me from behind, I have to force my weight this way. So that's one way. Another really good way to coach balance, I think, would be if you want them to hold their weight better and go that way down the pitch and not fall to the offside, why don't we try putting someone on a slanted box? So if you imagine they're batting at Lords down the hill and you feel like your weight's going that way, so if you put them on that, they have to fight really hard to make sure that their weight comes that way. So it's a bit like overtraining. So if they batted in that position, on a box, on a slant, or on a slope for a period of time, and then you take the slope away, they would feel much more balanced and able to go down the pitch rather than their weight going offside. So it would act like a natural coping mechanism they would find to make sure that they're not travelling in that direction to the offside, but they are travelling down the pitch. So that might be something people could try. But generally, I would say, if I could give anybody some advice or some tips, is encourage movement, get people to control movement, but don't limit it. What we don't want is players to have to be put in positions where it acts like a cast. So when when you break a bone or when you wear an orthotic because the podiatrist tells you don't move biomechanically correctly, all that does is set you in a position, and then your body finds a way out to adapt. And there's lots of research about orthotics out there and the pros and cons of those. We want to encourage batsmen to find the answers with movement, not by putting them in a set position, because it'd be very hard for them to find that set position again when they are moving and when they're playing the ball. So encourage movement, get them to control the movement, but all the time they should be looking to move and to adapt and find new ways. Going back to what my previous point, my main fundamentals of batting would be rhythm, balance and alignment, because over the years, having coached batting for a long time, if you try and break down people's methods, the best players that they've ever been, and all those different, there's thousands of people who bat in the world game, they all do it slightly differently. So if one of your fundamentals, for instance, is side on setup, then Steve Smith will come along and prove you wrong. If one of your fundamentals is that you need to have your eyes level, then I can show you some images of Ricky Ponting where his eyes were in this sort of position. So there's lots of variety in the way people do things, and the key to coaching is to try and help the individual find what suits them and try and work with what they do. So I don't believe you have to be side on. I don't believe you have to be front on. I think there's all different styles, and like I said in my video before, that generally traditional methods have always been broken by someone new who, Bradman picked the bat up different to how it had ever been done before. Steve Smith stands in a different way probably than it's ever been done before. There'll always be people who are trying to change convention and find new ways, because as soon as you find a new way to do things, the bowlers have to come up with a new solution. And if you ask any bowler out there, the hardest people generally to bowl at are people who do things differently. They're the ones that cause them the most problems. And that's what sport is about putting the person under pressure, your opponent under pressure. So we should embrace difference, we should coach difference, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't try and get someone side on or try someone open. It just means there's no right or wrong. There is no quick fix, and ultimately what suits them, that they will work out over time with your help. So a lot of coaches would talk about, going back over the years, would talk about high elbow, for instance, and I'm going to use this as an example of how I would coach and my philosophy, which is to coach the outcome and let the outcome find the technical model or the method that you want. So for instance, people who talk about high elbow want the player to have a high elbow so that they present the bat face square. But I would work on making sure that they present the bat face square and not worry about the elbow. So I would talk a lot about head, bat and ball being all in alignment. So if you can create a straight line, if you play a straight bat shot, so obviously discounting cross-batted shots, but if you play a straight batted shot, what you generally want to do is create a straight line between the ball, the bat, and your head. And if you can do that, wherever you're hitting the ball, your elbow and the rest of your body parts will find the solution, and they'll work it around. So I would use the bat face as much as possible. So my young boy who's 6 doesn't really like cricket, but he likes hitting a ball. He always hits the ball to the leg side. It's just, he just smashes it and it goes that way. So instead of me telling him to, use his front elbow more or to use his top hand more, I don't believe that we should separate the hands. I believe that they work together. So I don't want to tell him to use his top hand more or anything like that. But if I tell him to hit the offside, he naturally finds a shape of the shot that's going to make sure the ball goes and the bat face is in a straight line. So I would use the outcome. So I'd say to him, Finley, instead of hitting that wall, what I want you to do, I want you to hit that bush over there in the garden. And then he naturally then has to find his own way to get the bat face and the ball going in that direction. So that's how I would do it. Another good example would be, people talk a lot about the sweep shot and about pull shot, and they talk about get your hands high to low. For me, what I would do is say, right, I want you to hit the ball into the bottom of the net. Or I want you to make the ball bounce when you play a sweep shot. I want you to hit it and make it bounce before it hits the net. So that way you're coaching them to their hands. You don't need to talk about their hands or their specific body parts because they will do that automatically, but you use the outcome to get the desired movement pattern that you want. And those are just a couple of examples, I don't always get it right, but that would be something I would attempt to do as often as possible.
A question that a lot of young kids or players ask is about head position and weight distribution in the stance. Everyone's different when they bat, but for me personally, I think it's important to be quite neutral. You don't want your weight to be too far forward, and you don't want your weight to be too far back. It's really important in batting that we're able to go forward quickly or back quickly, depending on the length of the ball. So for me, I find if I'm quite neutral, but my head is maybe slightly forward, 60-40 perhaps, 60% on your front foot, 40% on your back foot, you're then in a position to easily go forward if the ball's full or on a good length and you need to defend, but equally you can easily push back, cut or pull, or evade if it's a bouncer. Another area which people are interested in with batting is the prelim movement or the trigger. In my view, there's no right or wrong answer here. Some players like to trigger, perhaps do a back and across before the bowler bowls it to get in position. Others like to stay still. I think the main thing here is that when the bloke lets the ball go, you're ready and you're still. So whatever you do before the bowler lets the ball go, whether it's a back and across, a slight shuffle back, or you're dead still, the main position to be in is still just before the bowler releases it so that you can then move forward or move back easily. If you do trigger, you need to make sure that you're not still moving and with that your head moving when the bowler releases. In regards to the backlift, generally I think we want the bat to be pointing to about second slip. I think that's a good position. We don't want the bat to be too straight. If it's pointing back towards the keeper or fine leg, it's then too difficult to get the bat around the body and that can get us into a poor position. Equally, if the bat's heading out wide towards point, that can be probably too wide as well and can make it difficult for us to then play straight. One of the most important things for all batsmen, especially opening the batting, is judging the line and length of the ball. In terms of line, early on, particularly when the ball's new and swinging and seaming, it's really important to know which balls to leave and which to play. For me, as a right-hander, if the right-arm bowler is bowling predominantly outswingers, early on in my innings, I know that if the ball's slightly wide or outside my eye line, providing it's swinging away, I can generally leave the ball. If it's full and there to be scored off, for example, if it's a half volley and it's really full, I can still look to score and hit the ball away for 4, as you should always be doing, looking to score. And likewise, if it's short and wide, you can be in a position to cut the ball. If it's of a good length and wide, generally I'll look to leave the ball, and if it's full, look to play late and under my eyes. In terms of length, it's important to be light on your feet, similarly to what we discussed earlier about having our weight evenly distributed so we can go forward and back. So that the ball's full, we're in a good position to go forward and attack. If it's there to defend, we can defend the ball, and if it's short, we're in a position to where we can go back easily, back and across to cut, pull, or evade. Early in our innings, particularly when the ball's moving or the ball's new, it's very important to try and play late and let the ball come to us. Going forward in defence, for example, some of the best players in the world, someone that springs to mind would be Kane Williamson, who's a master at playing the ball late. So we still try and pick up the line and length of the ball, get in position early, but then rather than meeting the ball and throwing our hands at the ball, we need to try and let the ball come and play nice and late, under our eyes and in close to our body.
Looking to take stance, it's obviously preferable or dependent on your strengths and weaknesses what guards you take. I look to take a middle and off guard, particularly to right arm fast bowlers, because that allows my head to be on off stump and to judge line really well, whether to play or whether to leave. If it's maybe a left arm bowler, I might come slightly this side of the ball, maybe open my stance up a little bit, maybe come on to middle or so, but it's really depending on your strengths and weaknesses. Obviously when you're staying leg side of the ball, you might open up the offside a little bit more to cut and to drive. Some top order batters are particularly strong off their legs, so they might look to take middle and off or off stump. Okay, so starting with the forward defence, obviously the bowler's best ball, challenging top of off, challenging a really good area. As batters, we want to combat that by getting good sort of weight transfer into the ball, starting with the head, getting out to that top of off position, leading with the head, good stride in and presenting the full face of the bat back to the bowler, and hopefully hitting the middle of the bat to combat their best ball and trying to stay in for as long as possible. So you obviously want to stay in a relatively side-on position. Obviously your bat's wanting to come down straight alongside your pad to act as a second line of defence. Your top half's really engaged, your top hand's really engaged. It's obviously a front foot shot, presenting the full face of the bat back to the bowler. So in England, it's obviously really important to play the ball nice and late. You want to play it underneath your eyes. The minute you get out in front, that's when we might nick the ball, we might miss it and it might hit our pad. So it's really important to play it nice and softly with soft hands, nice and late, so that any nicks do go down or might go for four, and that's really important in England. Okay, so the back foot defence is obviously still a defensive shot, but it's obviously a bit shorter length from the bowlers. To combat that as a batter, we want to get almost back and across, and to present the full face back to the bowler. It's obviously top of off or just shorter than that. We want to get that back and across movement, presenting the full face, head still over the ball but in a back foot position. So that back and across movement's really important because we need to decide whether to play or to leave. We want to ride the bounce really well, again playing with soft hands, making sure the ball goes down off the bat face and the edges don't carry. Really riding the ball well. That's obviously important when there's bouncing wickets in Australia and getting in that position there. So I'd say the key to the back foot defence is obviously you're still looking to get into the ball, you're still looking to get forward. As soon as you pick up that the length's slightly shorter, you're looking to get forward, and that's when you get that back and across movement. And you're looking to pick up the line and the length of the ball, obviously. And the length's really important to adjust. If it does bounce on you, you can get onto your toes and ride the bounce. Just like the same, if it keeps a bit low, you're in that position to just adjust the ball. And if it gets too big, you might drop your hands and leave. Okay, obviously in England, you want to judge the line really carefully. If it's sort of targeting towards the stumps, off stump, we're looking to play, but there are times when it just leaves us, and it's really important to leave the ball if it's outside our eye line. So a lot of us will start on sort of middle and off with our head on off stump. As soon as we get an indication that it's slightly wider, sort of fourth or fifth stump, that's our cue. We're looking to play, and then we leave it and let it go through to the keeper. What we don't want is to play away from our body where we're out of our control, and that's when we tend to nick it. So it's really important, front and back foot, that when it's outside our eye line, but it's still in a half decent area, that we have the leave in our armoury. So our head position starts on off stump. We're obviously looking to get that movement back into the ball, to looking to play, and then sometimes, as I say, the ball leaves us. Some batters choose to leave like that, some batters choose to leave like this, some batters are looking to play and then actually just withdraw the bat Marcus Trescothick was a really good example of he's looking just to play the line, but actually the ball is 2 or 3 ball widths outside of our eye line. But the key is having a really still head, you're looking to play, and then when you judge that it's sort of outside your right eye, that's your cue to leave, or leave, or leave. So just like playing and leaving, it's really important to pick up the line of the ball. Obviously if it's straighter but slightly over pitch, you want to be looking to play an on drive. Just like you are if it's on off stump or forced stump, you might be looking to play a straight drive or a slight offside drive to mid off, or if it's a little bit wider but over pitched, a nice cover drive. So that weight transfer is really important. So that head needs to go first to get into the ball, the foot follows, and you're looking to make contact underneath your eyes to hit the ball into the ground with a nice straight bat, and the ball should bounce just in front of you so that you're fully in control of the shot and your weight's over the ball like that. So with the lofted drive, it's no different in terms of the body position and the shape to a normal drive. We're just looking to make contact that little bit earlier, looking to go aerial, over mid-off or over mid-on. Again, that weight transfer is really important, that head position, picking up the line and length of the ball, and we're just looking to make contact a little bit earlier on the up, but keeping our shape really nicely so that we're really in control of the shot. So we play the lofted drive, probably if we're sort of on 30 or 40, maybe mid-on and mid-off or up, and we're looking to put something back on the bowler, put a bit of pressure on them. We see it's sort of slightly pitched up, and we can play the same almost risk-free drive, but slightly in the air, simply over the bowler's head, over mid-on and mid-off, but with a straight bat. So back foot punch is obviously similar to the back foot defence. We're looking to get forward, but then we move that back and across movement onto off stump or fourth stump, and we're looking to simply punch the ball just in front of square on the offside. Our body weight's still good, it's still over the ball. We're not looking to hit the ball too hard, but we're just looking to hit the ball into the ground, just in front of us, and it should go for 4 along the square with a straight bat. So back foot punch is a shot that often suits sort of taller players. It's really important to ride that bounce. Sometimes if it bounces on us, we get up on our toes, but that body weight's still really important. We're ready to adjust if it keeps low or bounces high with our hands to ride that bounce, but we're still looking to make really good contact and to not try and hit it too hard, like that. So the hook shot's when the bowler digs the ball in, it's short of a length. We're still looking to get forward, but then when we see it short, we're looking to get our hands out and out to the ball like so. We're looking to play it with a cross bat shot. We're looking to ride the bounce. We're looking to roll our wrists on impact to keep it down, or to go up and over the infield like so. It's really important we go out to meet the ball, to make contact about 1 metre in front of us, and to finish off the shot, but we're staying balanced at all times on the front foot. So the pull shot is again a ball that's sort of dug in by the bowlers when they've got a bit of pace. We're looking to get forward, but it's slightly back of a length, and it's an attacking shot that we want to put back onto the bowler. It's typically sort of chest height, and we're looking to meet the ball out in front. Our head's still going to the ball, our body weight's going forward, and we're looking to extend our arms like so and hit it towards mid-wicket and square leg. People play the pull shot slightly differently. Some people really play it off the front foot and go and meet the ball, especially if the bowler's not rapid. So like a KP would be a good example of someone who went out to get the ball off the front foot. Some people like to get a back and across movement and play it slightly later off the back foot. So the cut shot's a back foot shot as well, played to a slightly wider ball. We're looking for that width when the bowlers get slightly too wide. Again, we're looking for a slight movement back and across to get closer to the ball off stump. And we're looking to hit the ball square on the offside, get a nice shoulder turn with that left side, and come across the ball like that We're still in control of the shot. Our head and our face is over the ball. We want to really let the ball come, hitting it late, directly under our eyes, and it should go for 4 either side of point. So there are different ways to play the cut. Some people play a little late cut that might go slightly further behind square, and depending on where point is, you can manipulate the shot to hit it in front of square, on square, slightly behind square, or even a late cut where there's often, when there's not a third man in, it's often a high reward shot with relatively low risk. Okay, so the uppercut is when the ball's dug in short of a length. Again, we're looking to get on the front foot, but we then press back and we're looking to play a late cut over the slips or over third man, and we're looking to get a bit of leverage on the ball. We're looking to play it nice and late behind us and almost not trying to hit it too hard, but adding pace onto the ball and playing it like that. Okay, for the leg glance, it's a highly productive area for top order batters. Again, we're looking to pick up the line of the ball, and we're playing this shot to a ball that's slightly too straight on the line of our pads. We're looking to get a good stride into the ball like our drives. We're looking to play it nice and late with a straight bat, and then turning our wrists on it as the ball gets closer to us. So it's on the line of our legs, playing with a straight bat, and we're just turning the wrists, getting high value for it in mid-wicket and square leg. Okay, so the sweep shot, we're playing to spinners. We want to get nice and low, looking to pick up length early. When we see it's on a good length to a stock ball, we want to get a good stride in with our head. We're looking to get nice and low, and we want to make contact really out in front of us with a nice forward lean of our body shape. We're looking to make contact on the half volley or even on the full. And it's a shot around our front leg, finishing off like that. The key to the shot is staying nice and low, rolling our wrists on impact, keeping it along the ground, but getting out in front of our front toe. Okay, the reverse sweep's really important to manipulate the field. So often we only have one man behind square on the offside, and we're looking to manipulate the field. So what's really important with the reverse sweep is we get slightly this side of the ball. We change our hands a little bit from there to there, and then it's the same as the sweep. We're looking to get nice and low, pick the length early. When we see it's roughly on a good length, we're looking to get a little press with our head, get out to reach the ball, get out in front, and to meet the ball out in front like that. Again, it's a shot across our body. We're looking to get nice rhythm with our hands and play it like that. Okay, slog sweep's really similar to the normal sweep. We're just looking to hit it in the air to clear deep mid-wicket, often hitting it for 4 or 6. But it's still the same movement. We're starting nice and low. We're getting a nice little push forward with our head. We're looking to pick line and length early. And we're looking to get out in front. And we're looking to play the ball in the air with that swing there. Okay, so the switch hit, similar to the reverse sweep, is all about manipulating the field. Sometimes we have a point inside the ring, and it might be beneficial to hit it over that man for maximum reward for 4 or 6. With the switch hit, I tend to cross my feet over, so I take my stance normally, and then take a left-handed stance. I turn my grip a little bit, just like I do with the reverse sweep, and it's the same motion as the slog sweep. Okay, so the scoop is a one-day shot. Again, we're looking to premeditate this shot. We're going to get a little movement back and across and get almost front on to the bowler. So we start in a side-on position. We move before the ball's bowled, just before the ball's bowled, into a front-on position. We change our hands from a traditional grip to almost like a frying pan, and we're in this position here. We're then looking to beat the keeper or fine leg just behind us there by just getting enough bat on ball to use the pace and hit it away for 4 or 6. The key is using the pace, not doing too much with your hands, but staying out in front and just simply using the pace. If the bowler follows you, you're looking to go this way, but if you're good enough, you could almost go that way as well. So we're looking to get straight on to the bowler. Our left foot is in line with the stumps. We're looking to use the pace that way, but if they do follow us and they see us go and they go wider, being good enough to go that way as well. Okay, so the key to spin is either getting right out to the ball or right back. Sometimes when we get right out to the ball, to get the ball before it spins on the half volley, we can use our feet. So again, just like the sweeps, we're looking to get a nice low position, pick line and length really early. We're then looking to use our feet. So we forward press, we then click our heels like so, and we get into this position where we're a yard or 2 down the crease. We can then access the ball in front of our eyes and choose to hit it wherever we want, whether that's through mid-on or mid-off. But we've used our feet to create that leverage. So that first step's really important. So we get that initial press in, straight down the wicket, and then we use these next 2 steps to decide where we go. So we get that first big stride in. If we're looking to get the ball through the offside, we might give ourselves room and stay this side of the ball. If we're looking to go through the leg side, we get that that movement's the same, that first movement. If we're looking to go through the leg side, these next 2 steps determine where we want to hit the ball. So that first stride's a really important one, and then these next 2 are deciding where the ball's going to go.